mom and me closer. Not that we ever weren't close, but we got through that. And I said, Mom, what do we do? Do you leave him? And she goes, no. And she just didn't. They were never the same. They never had any love anymore. But
That's just terrible.
she just white knuckled through it. She's German. She's German, Scandinavian, English, and Irish, I think, is her background. Just pure American, Her ancestors settled Wisconsin. And so I was just drinking and crushing and on a lazy river of life, and I just didn't want what I saw. I didn't want a marriage like I just saw. I didn't want secrets. I didn't, my godfather and my dad used to had an affair. I wasn't going to church. I didn't want to be part of something. I thought that marriage was a trap, that it was going to be about deceit.
Who could fault him? Who could fault him for this? And it's so interesting the way it plays out that his homosexual father, who betrayed his family system, who betrayed his son, I don't know how many siblings Owen has. I think he's at least got another brother. So this father betrays the entire foundational basis for the family by acting out as a homosexual. Because there have been many cases throughout history of homosexual men raising families who do not act on those impulses, do not engage in that kind of indulgence, do not destroy their families in that way. But his father chose to do this. And then what's the resulting trauma that he's left in his son? An aversion to the traditional family system. Is that any more clear? Is that any more direct? The link right there, and that's why this homosexual, this LGBTQ agenda is being pushed in the media and in the public schools. They want to destroy the family, and then not only do they want to destroy the family actively now, but they want to establish so that in future generations people have a strong aversion to traditional family values. It's sick.
And so I stayed right on the surface. And I met Amy, and love was brought back into my life through Amy. And, God, I just didn't know that at the time, but
there's something that the APA doesn't want you to know, and that's that homosexual treatments, which are largely the ones that have the most success rate. It's a 34% sex rate, or it's 34% success rate. You can look this up in Homosexuality and the Politics of Truth by Jeffrey Satinover. It's a tremendous resource, and it's been shouted down in every liberal hall of social justice. They hate that book. It's a well underreported fact that 34% treatment success rate in Christian ministries, sort of like homosexual reclamation therapies, that's their success rate. That's what they're doing. And so it's no surprise that when he decides to come to God, he comes out of this Baphomet, praise Satan, destroy the family, become a liberal, all this crap lifestyle. He finds love, and love is synonymous with God. And lo and behold, what happens? So they don't want you knowing that there's actually a huge success rate, especially among the Christian ministries, in reclaiming these homosexual souls, these lost souls, these people that have very little impulse control and are engaged in hypersexual behavior that destroys and denigrates the family system and fundamentally attacks the basis of civilization. They don't want you knowing this.
So down the line, someone came to my mother's house.
By the way, I'm astonished. I got to stop interrupting this guy. Let me skip it back a little bit. I'm astonished that someone like Stefan Molyneux or someone like Thomas Woods, I'm astonished, and then I'm not astonished because of the libertarian bent there. I'm astonished that there isn't a frank discussion about LGBTQ issues, how it's aesthetically negative, how it destroys the family, when you look at the twin studies, it shows you that it is not a choice, or that they're not born that way, that it doesn't bear out in the twin studies, that homosexual people are born that way, that it is a choice, and it is also that it's something that is imposed. It's a type of brainwashing, it's a type of propagandizing that happens against people. I get this is very contentious. I know that if you're a homosexual, you're watching this is probably going to trigger you a lot. I do recommend that source that I mentioned earlier. But I'm astonished that that especially someone like Stefan Molyneux wouldn't have a frank discussion with his listeners about this. Maybe I've missed something. Maybe he did have that discussion at some point, but it's been my experience that the man has wholly and totally avoided it. This is something that I've taken issue with Stefan Molyneux with for a long time. I think these things need to be talked about. I think they need to be brought on the open. And if it seems too non-verifiable, if it seems too speculative, then fine, say that. But to just be totally quiet about homosexual issues, about LGBTQ, about the philosophical nature of these things is not very philosophical. So we owe Owen Benjamin a tremendous debt of gratitude for what he is talking about here. This is a frank and moral discussion of the homosexual nature of his father and what this did to his family. This blows the lid off of some great things. It's very, very timely. It's so good that he's having these revelations.
Down the line, someone came to my mother's house, and I had cleaned up my act at this point. I was with Amy. I don't remember the exact year, but someone came to my mom's house while my dad was gone, asking for money. It was a man, because I guess my dad, with some of his appetites, would give men money. And so one came to my mom's house. Well, I was gone. I was not living in that city. My brother wasn't there. My mom was alone. And so the young man was just started telling my mom stuff. And my mom, when my dad came home, we all just lit him up. You know, I went back to Oswego. It's like, how could you put mom in that situation? She's like, stop yelling at me. It's like, ah! So I told him that I don't even remember what I told him, but I wanted to kill him. And me and Amy were getting serious at that point, and I kind of alluded to her something about potentially killing somebody.
I'll add this to what I was saying earlier. There's a reason why libertarian atheists are not wholly prepared for the culture war that is coming down the pipeline, that is blowing up right now in our faces. There's a reason why they're not prepared. It's because they're not able to make moral statements on some of these family dynamics that we need them to. They have been psychologized, they have been pulled into the liberal psychiatric worldview, and they have a tolerance for some of these family betrayals, some of this aesthetically negative, some of this abusive stuff that pours out of the homosexual sphere of things. They are not prepared. So when they speak kindly of Christians, it's almost like there's a recognition of a courage that they lack in themselves. And I will give that to the Christians. I will grant that to the Christians. And a person who has God in their worldview, I do think, is much better prepared to speak out about these things in the way that we're being hypersexualized in society. My hat's off to the Christians. And I, of course, got there through reason and evidence, but also a fair bit of courage. I had to figure this stuff out for myself as well and deal with a lot of propaganda, a lot of negative, bad conditioning and programming that came through the media, through the internet age, and quite frankly, through a lot of the libertarians that have decided that freedom means a lack of impulse control, and so we should just flood our societies and indulge ourselves while there's still time, while we're still living off the fat of the land. A lot of these people have a lot of sympathy for the homosexual lifestyle. And I'm not characterizing all homosexuals as rampant, hypersexualized people, but that is the overarching tendency. That is the heartbeat of that culture. I have known homosexuals who are entirely celibate, haven't done homosexual act in decades. I've actually known people like this, and they're in the extreme minority. So when we're talking about things, we're dealing with things culturally, we're dealing with them in generalizations, and this is the generalization. And Christians are much more prepared to deal with this. And Owen Benjamin is a Christian, and what he's given us here is something that a libertarian atheist would have a lot of difficulties getting to because of the shortcomings and the ways they hamper themselves within their own ideologies.
And I said, what if someone is putting someone in date? I just kind of hinted at it. And she said, I need you, Owen. And I wrestled with it a lot. I really was thinking about killing my dad because...
What a strong woman, by the way. What a strong woman. I'm not sure I believe this thing like, oh, she had a black eye and stuff like this. Oh, Owen, she's a battered woman behind the scenes. For her to say, I need you, Owen, in the face of him dropping hints that he wants to murder someone, that takes a lot of strength from a woman. And that's a very feminine kind of strength. That is not a masculine Wonder Woman kind of strength. That's a very feminine, I need you for the family. I need you to protect me. I need you to be around for the future family that's to come. Very feminine, very strong.
I'd given him every opportunity I could. I didn't have God in my life. I did kind of, but I wanted to keep my mom safe, because what a lot of women don't understand is a son's bond with his mother is very, very strong. And so when anyone, whether it's your own father or anybody, puts your mother in danger, and when you have a gigolo type character come to your door wanting money from your dad's sexual appetites when your mom's home alone, you see your dad as an absolute threat. So I started thinking about how to kill my dad. I didn't like really go down that road, but and Amy loved me. And she basically said, I need you, Owen. I in my mind, I'm like, yeah, jail wouldn't be so bad if I can kill that guy.
Yeah, and this is born out of the rage of the betrayal. So we don't want to act on rage. That's why I'm not one of these people that's like, oh, homosexuals, well, let's eradicate them from the planet. I don't have that. I don't have that kind of rage toward homosexual people. There's a terrible predatory nature against children, and I want to disable that, let's say by any means possible. But that doesn't mean that there aren't people out there that haven't perverted the children and haven't thrown their lifestyles in the faces of children. Now, that's the small minority. So what are the implications of that? Well, I don't really know, but let's stick with the psychological material. Is that this type of like, I gotta kill this person. I gotta kill this person. It's born out of rage. It's born out of resentment. It's born out of being hamstrung and hampered by this overly polite, politically correct society we live in, where you can't say anything, you can't offer any pushback. And so when you are shut out like that, then you want to resort to extreme measures. But as I said earlier, that Christian-based homosexual recovery, there's a very clear word for it. I just am not remembering it off the top of my head. This reclamation sort of therapy that is offered to homosexuals. Very high success rate. Some empirically have offered a higher success rate than the 34% that I offered up, but that was it's an amalgamation of many therapists who were offering that kind of therapy. So there is a way of offering these people our compassion and encouraging them to find God, encouraging them to find the truth, encouraging them to sort out their issues. And a lot of homosexual disturbance comes out of, and this by the way was in all the psychiatric literature before the APA became politically radicalized in the 70s, and we've seen nothing but political radicalization out of the APA ever since their use of the DSM, or their abuse of the DSM and abusing people with it. This was in all the psychiatric literature, that homosexual disturbance was born out of it's often, so often, like the overwhelming majority of the cases, is born out of a disturbance between the child of one gender, so like a daughter, and then the parent of the other gender, so the father. But most often, it really does happen between the mother and the son. That's what all the psychiatric literature offered up. That has not been rebutted. That has not been discounted. That has not been accurately deconstructed by the great deconstructionists at the APA. Simply, the facts have been slathered over by political realities of, communism and socialism, and we've forgotten that this is really where this stuff comes out of. So that he would want to kill his father, it's an understandable reaction. It goes back, it's age old. It's a very, very, the betrayal of the father, the sins of the father. This is a very, very old kind of reaction. It's born out of rage, and it's, he's going to talk about compassion and empathy for his father, and that's useful for us in this discussion. We do want to give that to people who merit it, and we also just want to give a bit of it so that we keep our own sanity and we can keep moving in a positive direction rather than knocking down every nail and feeling like we're a hammer. So let's jump into it.
And I hated him because his selfishness had then brought my mother into it, his appetites. And bear in mind, this is a little while after I'm being humiliated publicly. His son, as he's giving money to men he's having sex with, some of which are attacking me on Twitter because they're his ex-students, and they're comparing me to Alex Jones. I'm a right-wing, and my dad silently sits there and says, "Oh, Owen, I mean, you lost your book contract," and I'm like, "Ah!"
Yeah, just rage and astonishment. There's this misnomer that, well, the homosexuals who go to pride parades and they act out in public, well, they're being more honest than the closeted homosexuals that try to maintain families. No, that is not true. The ones who try to serve the family system, if a homosexual cannot maintain a family themselves, obviously his father failed. Some, very few, but some of them are able to. They're able to redirect those energies back into the family. And then there are ones that support the family. These are very few because of the radicalization that has happened of homosexuals in the last couple generations. But the ones who can serve the family and can serve the family community, find existential meaning in their lives, objective meaning in their lives, they're able to contribute, and that is more honest than going out to these parades and saying you're proud of something that you were born with, so you couldn't help it anyway, so why are you being proud of unearned things? That is a lie. That is satanistic. The ones who do try to serve the family, they do merit more compassion and empathy. So his father isn't even one of the worst perpetrators. His father was bad. His father was probably confused about things and very, very well traumatized in his own childhood, but he at least had a family. He at least tried to serve the family system. That is more honest. Let's jump back into this.
And I had two roads in my life: kill my father or embrace love. And thank God I chose love. Guys, this this wouldn't exist if I had killed my father.
Beautiful. And I love that he had this mapped out. I love that he had that picture ready and that he's teaching us this lesson. Do not act out in rage. Do not, just because you think that there's some disturbed nature going on with homosexuality, it does not mean that you go around trying to ruin the lives of homosexuals. You offer your in-depth understanding to the situation. You don't even have to give it to the person themselves, especially if they're a perpetrator, if they're going around and they're trying to abuse children, they're trying to sexualize the society around them. It does not mean that you offer it to them directly, but you want to offer it to the principles, to the things that are operating behind the scenes, the things that are happening in the intellectual space. That's what you want to offer. You don't want to go around smashing everyone. You want to give understanding, and out of understanding comes truth. And then when you assert the truth and you stand on the side of truth, then you can help reparation happen. We don't want a bunch of wars. We don't want a bunch of destruction. That's always dysgenic. Always and forever wars have been dysgenic. The most courageous men have always died first. We've always lost the best stock in every single major war that's happened. We've lost the backbone of every society because that's the way that men offer themselves up to the grinding machine to save their families. We don't need that. We don't need some kind of wild war in the streets between homosexuals and family men or something like this. There needs to be the healing power of love. I absolutely agree with Owen on this. And this is the strength of Christianity. Christianity does not offer up rage and punitive behavior after punitive behavior and revenge and vendettas. That's why I took issue with Owen being in this vendetta mindset with Nick Fuentes. Not very Christian of him. We do want to take some examples from this because this is what allows society to get over difficult things, not be marred down in them but forever and given to the nightmare world of impulsivity that comes out of these kind of people, these people that have this disturbed relationship with themselves and with their society at large. Offer up understanding, offer up love. Beautiful. It's a beautiful story, and I'm so glad he has his sons, and I want him to have many more children. This is a good thing that he's showing us here. Very mature.
I forgave my father. And then I find out this week.
Forgiveness comes out of understanding. So I don't like the Christian, I think the Christian, here we go, right? I was speaking so highly of Christianity, I turn on it in a second. Correct me if I'm wrong, because this might not be how Christianity teaches it, at least how the old school sort of Bible thumping way, the real, pre-television era Christianity, maybe that's not how it was taught back then. But this thing of just offering up forgiveness because there was a trespass. It's like forgiveness comes out of understanding. When we're just speaking purely in philosophical terms, When you fully understand a person's motives, why they did what they did, how it affected you, then forgiveness, really all that means is that there's been a resolution and there's been a dissolution of the trauma. It dissolves. The trauma dissolves. The way it holds you in your mind and has this power over you. You know, people who are very traumatized, they're very suspicious. They're very suspicious of the world. They're always ready to go in fight or flight, and they gotta really put the leery and eye suspicion suspicion on you. That's how really traumatized people behave, and it's this whole problem in their psyche because they're holding on to something really tightly. But when we have understanding, when we have a calm analysis of what's happened, and we feel some of the feelings that came up, when we empathize, we understand a person's history, what drove them to do that, and so on and so forth. It doesn't mean that they're healed. It doesn't mean that they're healed. They need to do that for themselves. And as a society, we can offer that up to people. That's why I'm saying we need to heal homosexuals, if anything, not go around and throw them out of helicopters. Gosh, we want this dissolution of the evil, of the trauma, of the pain. And so, you know, this thing that, I forgave him. Maybe he did it flippantly. I think a lot of Christians do that. They forgive flippantly, and then they're aggressed against, they're perpetrated against again, and then this whole cycle continues. It's like, no, only when there's real forgiveness, only when there's real understanding, can we actually, in actuality, move on. So forgiveness for the father would mean understanding why he did what he did. Maybe he got these insights from his journals. Why did he lie to everyone? Why couldn't he have been honest? Why is he still doing what he's doing? What kind of lack of prefrontal cortex does he have in order to be behaving so hypersexually into his old age like he is? Why did he become a witch? So on and so forth. So when there's a lot of understanding, there's a lot of analysis, and there's a lot of feeling around the circumstances that played out, that's what heals the trauma. So this forgiveness thing, forgiveness can be, from Christians, it can be like this thing that's just sort of imposed on a situation rather than a piecing through the situation. And I don't agree with that. But that's probably not how it was taught in the pre-television era Christianity. So I do want to offer that huge caveat in there. It's important that we don't just throw forgiveness at a situation because it's the right thing to do. Forgiveness comes out of understanding.
My mom is an adjunct professor. Before that, this is me for a few years. For those of you just listening, it's just a little mouse reading How to Kill. So my mother's an adjunct professor who quit being a professor. And bear in mind, when my mother spent money getting her PhD, my dad would threaten suicide because of his money issues. He said, "We'll be in the poorhouse. We don't have the money for this." And he kept threatening suicide when I was a kid. I used to follow him around so he wouldn't kill himself.
How neurotic.
And
that's a terrible burden he just admitted. Look how he's haunted. He had to follow his father around when he was a kid to make sure that he didn't kill himself. If that isn't hyper trauma, I don't know what is. If that isn't PTSD inducing levels of trauma, I don't know what is.
Just since January, my father stole $100,000 from my mother and gave it to men. So this is how the world works, ladies and gentlemen.
She needs to leave him. She can't because she's hanging in there out of some sense of duty or something like this. This guy's going to destroy her life. She needs the understanding. If Owen wants to really take charge and ownership of this situation, he needs to have some frank discussions with his mother. He needs to help his mother in this time.
It's probably an incalculable amount of money he's done this with. He's been doing this now for literally decades. The sodomite, part Jew fuck. We'll get to that in a second. So I had to forgive my father and choose love. And I did. My mother did too. My brother did too. We didn't kill him.
Yeah, but I think this was a false forgiveness, and that's why this is coming back around again. If they'd really worked through it 3 years ago or whatever, whenever this was, it sounds like when he was first getting with Amy, if they truly worked through this, then the father would be out of the situation. He would be totally defanged. He wouldn't be in this situation where Owen doesn't talk to him, and that's just the extent of it. Because he's left his mother, because he didn't have full understanding, this was a partial forgiveness. His mother was left in the line of fire, and he's telling us that since January this year, if my understanding is correct to what he just said, his father stole $100,000 from his mother. So this was an incomplete forgiveness. This is why this is coming back around again. That's why it's so important to put some finality into things, to really, really cross your T's and dot your I's and understand what has happened. True forgiveness would be ejecting this man from the family system and making the broader community aware of his predilections, his appetite for hypersexuality, so that that could be neutralized, so he could reperpetrate on, we could say, he's probably going for younger males, and he's the way he's bribing them and getting them to be in this induced state with him of sexuality is through money. So he's taking advantage. Continue. This isn't like some libertarian, oh, well, it's just two people in bed. Just stay out of it, bro. What the people do in the privacy of their own home. No, there's a psychological component here. This is why I take issue with some of this atheistic libertarian. Well, just factually speaking, when you look at just the functionality of the situation, two people agreeing, it's a contract. Why would you break up a contract? No. This guy is using his money, his wizardry tricks, to continue to perpetrate on the people around him. So if you want real forgiveness and if you want real community, you want real society, then the way that works is that you get the woman out of the situation, because we don't want women victimized by that kind of thing. And then you let the community, the broader community, and this is what he's doing now. This is why he will come to a more complete forgiveness of the situation, a more deeper understanding. And this admission just on its own, what he's done here is going to dissolve a lot of trauma for him. It's going to clear him up, neurologically speaking. It's going to allow him to reason through things better. You'll probably see a sunnier disposition in him toward his relationships with other platformers. It's no surprise that this dovetails a huge falling out that he had with Nick Fuentes, and a falling out that he tried to have with Stefan Molyneux. I don't know how far that one's going to go through. It's no surprise that this follows that. This means that this admission of trauma is directly related to what just happened. When we have experienced trauma, what happens is that we act it out. We act it out. It's called the repetition compulsion. We're compelled to act it out. So you act it out once, nothing really happens, just a bunch of problems happen in your life. You act it out once again, you start to have a partial understanding of the situation. You start to get a grip on it. This is when people have personal big blow-ups. And then the third time that it happens, usually doesn't go further than 3. The third time that you have a big sort of blow-up on a trauma issue, when you're compelled to perpetrate it one more time, then that's the time that you really figure it out. So it helps to be self-knowledgeable and to kickstart this process as soon as possible, so that you're as close to your childhood as possible, so that you still have the primacy of feeling as close to your childhood as possible. But working out at any point is totally valid. It's absolutely needed. And that's what Owen is doing here. He's really blowing the lid off this thing this time. And kudos to him.
We just started. And then, so when I'm on this stream and people are like, just call your dad, dude, just call your, I'm like, my dad
is a monster.
Deserves nothing.
His dad is a monster.
And so this is how the world works. This is what happens to wizards. And this is why I've committed my life now to, I know my role now.
Good.
It's to reveal in myself and people and others. And this is my role. I'm doing it.
Do it in yourself first before you do it for others.
And so I couldn't tell this story because it wasn't my story. It was my mother's. I couldn't kill my father because my wife asked me not to. The love in my life, 2 people loved me and it saved me. So my mom said, don't tell the story because there's no point.
No. See, that's her nihilism. That's her inability to deal with the situation. And he took that on for her out of nobility and out of a sense of duty to her. But that was her nihilism. That was her inability to rise above.
Mother's got this...
and it hurt her to the tune of $100,000 and many more affairs in their marriage.
My mother might as well be, General Patton or Sun Tzu. She is strategic to a degree that's hysterical, right? And so she goes, it wouldn't help anybody. Just leave it.
No.
I said, okay, I want to, Mom. People want to know why I'm screaming about sodomites right now. She's like, just leave it. So it wasn't my story to tell. So I could tell my story about my dad, which was that he threatened suicide a lot when I was a kid and told me that if I wasn't born, he could have been dean somewhere. But I never told anybody about him watching gay porn on my roommate's computer the only time he ever visited me, or his pen pal, the guy with AIDS, or the affair he had with my godfather, or the men he would pay for what we presumed to be sex. That was my mom's story.
Yeah, but right now he's bearing witness to his mother's story. Like she said, she's just a girl from Wisconsin. She wasn't equipped to deal with this. He's his father's son. He has half of his genetics are his father's. He has the strength to combat this. We don't look to women to offer us leadership in these psychological issues. While women have tremendous empathy and they have tremendous nurturing capabilities, they are not the leaders in the family system. So it's really not up to the woman to spearhead it, even if it is her story. The son needs to look out for the mother in this situation. The son needs to look out for the wife, and the son needs to he's now a father to the daughter. The strong man in the family system, truly righteous and truly good and moral, he's the one that spearheads. He's the natural leader. He's the inevitable leader, and we want to respect that process. It's nice to have this nobility for your mother, but she lost another $100,000. So he's really taking charge now.
So this week, my dad, that wizard fucking retard, accidentally sends his financial advisor emails between him and one of his men.
He didn't do it accidentally. These things happen unconsciously. And unconsciously, there's a lot of reasoning that happens unconsciously. His father is self-destructing. It's not an accidental thing. This impulsive hypersexuality, it's a secret. And secrets always come out. People always reveal this stuff to you. If someone's nursing some sort of quiet addiction in the background, they will inevitably show you. They'll show you at some point or another. And, if you're in a relationship with someone like that, yikes, get away from that. You want sober people in your life. You want people who are not nursing addictions. It doesn't mean that you cut out everyone that has that immediately. But if they can't resolve it, then they're going to spill out onto you unconsciously from time to time. His father's financial advisor was probably the closest person to his father. So it's no surprise that this played out the way it did.
It gets flagged. They call my mom. Now people know. Well, I mean, our family friend who's their advisor.
Yeah, family friend. So this guy was probably the closest person his father had. Whoa.
And my mom laughs today and says, well, I guess you can tell people now. He stole $100,000 from my mother.
No. Oh, my God.
An adjunct who gave up teaching to raise his kids, who makes $8,000 a year. $8,000 total. Because she gave up her career to be a good mother. What does my father do in return? Steals $100,000 just to cash. Where'd that cash go, Dad? I was just trying to, don't yell at me.
What a weak and pathetic man. And I'll say this, it's Owen's place to condemn his father. It's not my place to condemn his father so much, because this is his family system and he's a leader in the family system. And I don't want to get involved in his family system. This is his place to condemn his father. If he's decided that his father is irredeemable, if his father has sinned too much, if he's gone too late into life, and this isn't just some ideal thing like, oh, well, you can be Hitler until you're like 98 years old, and then if you repent on your deathbed, I mean, mega Hitler, super Stalin, and then on your deathbed, when you're 98, you say, well, I believe in God and please, I want all my sins forgiven. It doesn't work that way in effect. This man has spread out so much misery, so much deceit for so long that he can be condemned. And it's really up to the people that he perpetrated against when they bear witness, when they bear testimony to his abuses, to his crimes. Will he be condemned or will he not? And that is part of the natural system of justice, part of the natural order. There is a balance. There is a formula in there. The people who are closest are the ones that can decide the best if they have very clear thinking. And he may be a total goner at this point. And so this level of intervention that he has to out his father in a live stream to thousands and thousands of people lets us know the degree of pain that this man has caused and what little potential he has for redemption coming out of this, particularly with the way he's acting. Oh, don't yell at me, with the way he's acting, this spineless way that he's acting. This is a lost soul here. This is a man. I won't condemn him with total finality. Owen's got to do that, but it's not looking good for this guy. This guy he's probably not going to recover from this, and we need to be aware of that. Owen is warning us. And he's warning us about something in himself. I mean, we can dig into that. I think I've already dug into that in the last 3 videos. This makes total sense. Why he has been so treacherous with Nick Fuentes. It just really makes a lot of sense when you look at how treacherous his father was. So something to think about. So there's a balance in life. If you put too much crap into the scales, how many good deeds and is it really in your neural makeup to put it in enough on the good deeds for the rest of the duration of your life to rebalance the scales and perhaps to tip you toward the good? Whoa, it's a long shot. It's a long, long shot. It's like America electing Trump. And Trump represents what America actually is, which is a nation. It's not an ideal. It's not a placeholder for ideas and values. It's a nation. It's a people. Trump was the long shot. Will America be redeemed, or has America sinned too much? Has America gone to a few too many wars? Has America participated in a few too many genocides of whites, including Southern whites and German whites? Has America participated in too many sins that the scales will be tilted? I keep tilting toward the good, tilted toward the bad so far that America will have to break up, balkanize, be destroyed, a cleansing fire will come through, and yada, 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 yada. So that's a metaphor for this man's psyche and for what he has done in the broader world. And Owen is revealing himself to a degree that I have not experienced yet from him. And he's teaching us some tremendous lessons in this video. I don't want to belabor that point. I've said that a few times now, but it's something we want to think about in terms of condemnation, in terms of, what has a person done with the duration of their life, and how does that compound to them? How does the effect of that compound to them? And some people will redeem themselves and some will not. And this guy's case is looking really, really bad. And no wonder that Owen's going to these lengths.
I don't know. Maybe this is putting together some pieces for you guys about me and my behavior.
Yeah, which he needs to ask forgiveness for, I think.
He's a wizard. I don't hate him. I've forgiven him. He will burn in hell if he doesn't repent.
Yep.
He should get on his knees and beg Jesus Christ for forgiveness to what he did to my mother, to me, to everyone who touched his cancerous life.
And make it right. Asking for forgiveness is the start. Repenting is the start, but you have to make it right. You have to set your wrongs to right.
This is why I know it's possible. Because when I was born, when Jason was first born and the nurse was going to circumcise him, my dad went into a rage. This is why I know he was assaulted as a child. He said, "You stay away from my son." My dad never molested me. He never molested my brother.
Good.
He insisted that no one touched our penises at the doctors.
That is good.
My dad's a
Never let that happen.
damaged, selfish, empty piece of human shit. But he didn't molest us. And he didn't let anyone cut off part of our dicks.
Okay, so maybe he's got a chance to repent.
He wanted to end the cycle. He wanted it to end. He failed. He failed.
This is so
But
powerful.
he wanted to. He didn't create more monsters.
He didn't in his family. How many young men did he participate with in these acts? And how did he enable them? Maybe he didn't make one directly and that he preyed on a child directly. But we don't know the sum total of this guy's actions. We're getting what Owen has relayed to us. So it's fantastic that he didn't do this to his children, and it really says something about him. And I didn't know this 10 minutes ago, 5 minutes ago when I was talking about condemnation. So powerful.
But I warned him. I said, Dad, if you put my mother or us, and guys, you don't know.
And that's it. He set up his father to fail in that sense because the man was going to. I understand that you want to give people the benefit of the doubt, but he set up his father. He could have had a deeper understanding at the time when he set that ultimatum with his father, and then his father wouldn't have been set up to fail. It was something that he was not going to honor. It was something that he was not going to complete. Maybe he did for a time, and good on him. But I'm pretty sure that we can infer that he's continued to have affairs during this time, which hurts the family. And if he didn't, and this was a secret, again, that he pushed it way down and he hid it from everyone, okay, maybe that shows a big heart from Owen, but it's not a way of setting up an addict for success.